In Cedar Grove Memorial Hospital, 72-year-old Eleanor Richards made a horrifying discovery. Trapped in her own body by locked-in syndrome after a massive stroke, she could hear and understand everything around her, but couldn't move or speak. As her family gathered in her hospital room, believing she was unconscious, they revealed their darkest secrets: her husband's affair and gambling debts, her children's resentments and financial schemes, all while planning her funeral and dividing her possessions. The funeral home brochures lay spread across the table like a macabre buffet as they debated casket styles, completely unaware that Eleanor heard every devastating word. With life support withdrawal scheduled for Thursday, she had just 48 hours to somehow signal she was still conscious before her family ended her life. If this story sends chills down your spine, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. We post new true stories every Monday and Thursday. Leave a comment telling us what you would do in Eleanor's situation. Don't miss our next upload. It's even more shocking than this one. The late afternoon sun cast golden shadows across the Richards family backyard, where white tablecloths fluttered in the gentle Massachusetts breeze. Eleanor Ellie Richards moved through the gathered crowd with the practiced grace of someone who had orchestrated countless family celebrations over the decades. At 72, she still carried herself with the quiet authority that had made her such an effective elementary school principal for 35 years, her silver hair pinned back in the same neat style she'd worn since the 1980s. "More lemonade, Mrs. Henderson?" she asked Dorothy's elderly neighbor, already reaching for the pitcher before receiving an answer. Everything had to be perfect for Michael's graduation party. Her youngest grandson had worked so hard to finish college. After the struggles of his early 20s, this moment felt like a victory for the entire family. The backyard buzzed with conversation as relatives and friends celebrated Michael's achievement. Ellie's trained eye swept across the gathering, cataloging details with a thoroughness that had served her well in managing unruly classrooms. Her son William stood near the barbecue grill, gesturing animatedly as he held court with his business colleagues. Her daughter Jennifer was helping her own teenage daughter serve drinks, the two of them moving in perfect synchronization. Even Michael seemed relaxed for once, accepting congratulations with genuine smiles instead of his usual defensive shrugs. Richard, her husband of 49 years, was deep in conversation with his old friend James Morrison near the rose bushes Ellie had planted when they first moved to this house. She caught fragments of their discussion, something about interest rates and market fluctuations, and smiled. Some things never changed. Richard could find a way to discuss insurance and investments at a birthday party for toddlers. "Grandma Ellie," Michael's voice carried across the yard, "where's that famous apple pie you promised?" She laughed, the sound carrying years of joy and pride. "Coming right up, sweetheart." The pie sat cooling on the kitchen windowsill, its golden crust bearing the perfect lattice work that had taken her 40 years to master. She'd made this same recipe for every family celebration since the children were small, and Michael had been requesting it specifically since he could talk. Ellie carefully lifted the heavy ceramic serving tray, balancing the pie alongside a stack of her grandmother's china plates. The weight felt familiar in her hands, though she noticed it seemed heavier than it used to. Getting older, she supposed? Though she'd never admit such a thing out loud, Richard worried enough about her health as it was, fussing over every doctor's appointment and monitoring her blood pressure medication like a hawk. She pushed through the screen door with her hip, calling out, "Here comes the grand finale!" The assembled crowd turned toward her voice, faces lighting up with anticipation. Michael bounded over, his graduation cap sitting askew on his dark hair. "You're the best, Grandma," he said, reaching to help her with the tray. "Nonsense," she replied, pulling the tray protectively against her chest. "I've been carrying pies to family gatherings since before you were born. I think I can manage." The words died in her throat as something strange happened. The familiar weight of the tray suddenly felt impossible, as if someone had filled it with concrete. Her vision blurred at the edges, and a peculiar tingling sensation swept down her left arm. The cheerful sounds of the party seemed to fade, replaced by a rushing noise like wind through distant trees. "Grandma!" Michael's voice sounded far away, though she could see his face just inches from hers. His expression was shifting from amusement to concern, his eyebrows drawing together in the same worried frown he'd worn as a little boy. The tray slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers. Time seemed to slow as she watched her grandmother's china plates tumble through the air, the perfect apple pie following in a graceful arc. The crash when it came sounded like thunder in her ears. Ceramic shards scattered across the wooden deck, mixing with chunks of apple and flaky crust. Then the world tilted sideways, and Ellie felt herself falling. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Richard's face, his features twisted with terror as he ran toward her across the yard. James Morrison close behind. The last thing she heard was Jennifer's scream, high and sharp, cutting through the confused babble of voices like a knife. Then, nothing. The ambulance ride passed in fragments, the wail of sirens, Richard's voice breaking as he spoke to the paramedics. The rhythmic beeping of machines. Ellie felt herself floating above it all, watching from some impossible distance as uniformed strangers worked over her motionless body. She tried to speak, to tell Richard she was all right, but no words came. She tried to squeeze his hand when he grasped hers, but her fingers remained still. What's happening to me? The emergency room at Memorial Westlake Hospital erupted into controlled chaos as the ambulance doors swung open. Ellie watched the medical team transfer her body to a gurney, noting with strange detachment how small and fragile she looked under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her silver hair had come loose from its pins, spreading across the pillow like spilled water. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan appeared at her bedside, her familiar face grave with concentration. Ellie had known Elizabeth since she was a gangly 12-year-old whose father had delivered half the babies in Oakwood. Now she was the hospital's chief neurologist, her gentle hands moving with practiced efficiency as she examined Ellie's unresponsive form. Mrs. Richards, can you hear me? Dr. Morgan's voice was professional, but kind. If you can hear me, try to squeeze my hand. I'm here, Ellie screamed silently. I'm right here. I can hear everything, but her body remained utterly still, betraying nothing of the frantic consciousness trapped within. Richard paced the small examination room like a caged animal, his usually perfect silver hair disheveled, his tie loosened and askew. She was fine, he kept repeating to anyone who would listen. She was serving pie, talking and laughing. How does someone just collapse like that? Doctor. Morgan's expression grew more serious as she completed her initial examination. She pulled Richard aside, her voice dropping to the low, careful tone medical professionals used when delivering difficult news. Mr. Richards, I need to be honest with you. Your wife has suffered what appears to be a massive stroke. The preliminary scans show significant brain activity disruption. We're going to need to run more comprehensive tests. But, she paused, choosing her words carefully, you should prepare yourself for the possibility that this could be very serious. Richard's face went ashen. He sank into a plastic chair beside Ellie's bed, reaching for her hand with fingers that trembled. But she'll wake up. Right people recover from strokes all the time. She's strong, always has been, took care of everyone else her whole life. Dr. Morgan's silence spoke volumes. The ICU waiting room filled gradually as word spread through the family network. William arrived first, still wearing his khaki slacks and polo shirt from the graduation party, his normally composed executive demeanor cracking at the edges. He immediately began making phone calls, his voice crisp and businesslike as he contacted insurance companies and arranged for coverage at his job. Jennifer came next, her arms around her teenage daughter Emma, both of their faces streaked with tears. She moved through the waiting room like a woman in shock, automatically straightening magazines and offering tissues to other family members, her natural caretaking instincts taking over even in crisis. Michael was the last to arrive, having stayed behind to clean up the broken china and scattered pie from the deck. His young face was pale with guilt, and he kept running his hands through his hair, a nervous habit Ellie had observed since he was small. This is my fault, he said to no one in particular. If I hadn't asked for the pie, if she hadn't been carrying that heavy tray, stop it! William's voice was sharp with his own stress. This isn't anyone's fault. These things just happen. But Ellie could see the fear behind her eldest son's authoritative tone. She could see it in all their faces, the sudden, terrible awareness of mortality that comes when someone you've always thought invincible proves to be frighteningly human. Dr. Morgan emerged from the ICU at nearly midnight, her expression carefully neutral. The family gathered around her in a semicircle, their faces etched with exhaustion and dread. The tests confirmed that Mrs. Richards has suffered a massive cerebrovascular accident, a stroke. The damage is extensive, affecting multiple areas of the brain responsible for motor function and consciousness. At this point, she's in what we call a persistent vegetative state. Richards' voice was barely a whisper. What does that mean, exactly? It means that while her body continues to function with mechanical support, there's no evidence of conscious brain activity. She's not aware of her surroundings, not experiencing pain or discomfort. For all practical purposes, Dr. Morgan's voice trailed off. No, Ellie's silent scream echoed in the prison of her own mind. I'm here. I can hear every word. I'm conscious. I'm aware I'm still me. But her body lay motionless on the hospital bed, betraying nothing of the desperate woman trapped within. How long? Jennifer's voice was thick with tears. It's impossible to say. Some patients in this condition can survive for years with proper care. Others, Dr. Morgan spread her hands helplessly. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. As the family absorbed this devastating news, Ellie found herself observing their reactions with the same careful attention she'd once brought to studying her students. Richard sat frozen, staring at his hands. William was already calculating, she could see it in his expression, thinking about practical matters, logistics. What came next? Jennifer wept quietly, her shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. Michael just looked lost. A young man suddenly confronted with the fragility of the adults he'd always counted on. None of them suspected that she could see everything, hear everything, understand everything. They spoke around her bed as if she were already gone, their voices carrying the particular tone people used in the presence of the dead. And as the night wore on, as she lay trapped in the darkness of her own body, Ellie began to understand that her real ordeal was just beginning. Because tomorrow, the family would have to start making decisions about her care, about her future, decisions that would reveal who they really were when they thought no one was watching. The machines beside her bed beeped steadily, marking time in a world where she existed but could not participate. Outside her window, dawn was beginning to break over Oakwood, painting the sky in soft pastels that reminded her of the watercolor paintings she'd once helped her students create. But Ellie couldn't see the sunrise. She could only listen as her family began the first whispered conversations about what happened next, their voices carrying currents of grief and practicality that would soon reshape everything she thought she knew about the people she loved most. Richard's hand tightened on the coffee cup as he finished speaking with James in the hospital corridor. The bitter liquid had gone cold hours ago, but he continued to grip it like an anchor. 3 days had passed since Ellie's collapse, 3 days of sterile waiting rooms and hushed conversations with medical staff who spoke in careful, measured tones that revealed nothing and everything at once. Dr. Juan Morgan approached the family cluster in the ICU waiting room, her expression carrying the weight of difficult news. She'd changed from her weekend clothes into crisp hospital scrubs, but her eyes showed the fatigue of someone who'd spent 72 hours wrestling with an impossible diagnosis. I've completed the comprehensive neurological assessment, she began, her voice steady but kind. The results confirm our initial fears. Mrs. Richards shows no measurable brain activity in the areas responsible for consciousness, voluntary movement, or cognitive function. The damage from the stroke is extensive and, I'm afraid, irreversible. Richard felt the words hit him like physical blows. Beside him, Jennifer made a small, wounded sound, while William's jaw tightened into the hard line he'd worn throughout his corporate career when facing unwelcome quarterly reports. What are you saying? Exactly. William's question was sharp. Executive. What are our options here, Doctor? Morgan's pause lasted only seconds, but to Ellie, trapped in the prison of her unresponsive body, it felt like hours. Tell them I'm here, she screamed silently. Tell them I can hear every word. I'm saying that your mother is in a persistent vegetative state. Her body continues to function with mechanical support, but there's no evidence of consciousness or awareness. She's not experiencing pain or discomfort, but she's also not present in any meaningful way. I am present, Ellie's mental voice echoed futilely in the darkness. I'm right here, I can hear you giving up on me. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his plastic chair, his graduation cap still sitting on the side table where he'd placed it when they first arrived. But people wake up from comas, right? I mean, you hear stories? Those are rare cases involving different types of brain injuries, Dr. Morgan explained gently. Mrs. Richards's condition is different, more severe. Richard's voice, when it came, sounded older than his 75 years. How long do we have to decide about what comes next? The question hung in the air like smoke. Ellie felt something cold and terrible settle in her chest as she realized what her husband was really asking. Not how long until she recovered, but how long they had to decide whether to keep her alive. There's no immediate urgency, Dr. Morgan said carefully. She's stable on life support, but you'll want to consider your options. Speak with other family members, perhaps consult with your spiritual advisor. These decisions are never easy. After Dr. Morgan left, the family sat in stunned silence. The waiting room's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh, unforgiving clarity. Ellie could hear the distant sounds of the hospital monitors beeping, nurses making their rounds, the occasional announcement over the intercom, but her family's silence was deafening. Finally, William cleared his throat. We need to be practical about this. Mom would want us to be practical. Would I? Ellie wondered bitterly. When exactly did I tell you that I'd want you to give up on me after 3 days? There are arrangements to consider. William continued, his voice taking on the efficient tone he used in business meetings. Insurance policies, the will, funeral plans. If we're looking at, if this is going to be the outcome, we should start thinking about these things. Jennifer looked up sharply. William, she's not dead yet. I know that. William snapped, then moderated his tone. I'm just saying we need to be prepared. Mom always said she didn't want to be a burden. Didn't want to linger if there was no hope. When did I say that Ellie tried desperately to remember any conversation where she might have expressed such sentiments? She'd always been focused on living, on taking care of everyone else. When had she ever talked about dying? Richard stood abruptly. I need some air. James is coming by in a bit. He wanted to pay his respects. As Richard walked toward the elevators, Jennifer turned to her brothers. This doesn't feel right. It's only been 3 days. Shouldn't we wait longer? Get a second opinion? Michael nodded eagerly. I agree with Jennifer. Maybe there's something the doctors are missing. Maybe what? William's frustration was evident. Maybe she's going to miraculously wake up and everything will be fine, Jennifer. You've seen the scans. You heard what Dr. Morgan said. The brain damage is massive. But what if she can hear us? Jennifer's voice was small, almost childlike. What if she knows we're talking about giving up on her? I can hear you. Ellie screamed into the void. I can hear every word, and I'm begging you not to give up. William's expression softened slightly. Jen, she's not suffering. Dr. Morgan made that clear. She's not aware of anything. It's not like she's trapped in there listening to us. The irony was so brutal that Ellie felt as if her silent heart might break. Her own son, the child she'd raised and sacrificed for, was describing her exact situation while dismissing it as impossible. 20 minutes later, James Morrison arrived, his presence filling the waiting room with the particular energy of someone uncomfortable in hospitals. He embraced Richard with the awkward affection of men who'd known each other for decades, then nodded solemnly to the children. Richard, I'm so sorry. Ellie's always been like family to me. Ellie found herself questioning things she'd never thought to question before? James had been around for years, but had she ever been anything more to him than Richard's wife, the woman who made coffee when he came over to discuss business? James, could you walk with me? I need to step outside for a minute, Richard said, his voice strained. As the two men left together, Ellie felt a chill of premonition. Richard's relationship with James had always been based on business and male bonding that excluded her. Now, with her supposedly unconscious, what might they discuss in the corridor outside? Richard's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. James, I don't know what to do. The doctors are saying there's no hope, but how do you make a decision like this? How do you decide to let someone go? James's response was measured, practical. Richard, you got to think about what Ellie would want. She was always a sensible woman. Would she want to be kept alive like this, hooked up to machines? I don't know, Richard admitted, his voice breaking slightly. We never really talked about it. You always think you have more time. We have time now, Ellie wanted to scream. If you just wait, if you just believe I might come back. James placed a hand on Richard's shoulder. There's something else you need to consider, buddy, the practical side. Insurance, finances. A long-term care situation like this, it could bankrupt you, wipe out everything you and Ellie worked for. Richard was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, become more calculating. The life insurance policy is substantial enough to pay off the house, cover all the debts. Exactly. And if this drags on for months or years, eating up all your savings, what's left for you? What's left for the kids' inheritance? Ellie felt something die inside her chest. Her husband, her partner of 49 years, was discussing her life insurance payout while she lay not 50 feet away, conscious and aware and desperately trying to signal her presence. I've been thinking about that, Richard continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The financial relief would be significant. I could finally pay off those gambling debts, start fresh, maybe even think about relocating, getting away from all these memories. Gambling debts, Ellie's mind reeled. What gambling debts? James nodded knowingly. Grace has been asking about you. By the way, she cares about you. Richard, she understands what you're going through. Grace. The name hit Ellie like a physical blow. Grace Henderson was a widow from their church, someone who'd always been overly solicitous toward Richard during coffee hour, always finding excuses to touch his arm or comment on his insights during Bible study. Grace has been very supportive during this difficult time, Richard said carefully. It's nice to have someone who understands. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Richard was having an affair. While she lay fighting for her life, Her husband was discussing their future together, a future that required Ellie to be permanently out of the picture. Back in the waiting room, the Richards children were having their own difficult conversation. William had pulled out his phone and was scrolling through something that looked suspiciously like funeral home websites. "I'm just gathering information," he said defensively when Jennifer shot him a sharp look. "If we're going to have to make arrangements, we should know what's involved." "Arrangements," Michael repeated flatly. "You mean planning Mom's funeral while she's still alive?" "She's not alive. Michael?" William's voice cracked with frustration and something that might have been grief. "Her body is alive, but Mom is gone. The sooner we accept that, the sooner we can start figuring out how to move forward." Jennifer began to cry quietly, and her teenage daughter Emma moved closer to comfort her. "I can't believe we're talking about this," Jennifer whispered. "3 days ago, she was serving pie at Michael's graduation party." "I know," William said, his voice gentling. "But we have to be realistic. The doctors aren't giving us any hope. And honestly, would Mom want to live like this, hooked up to machines, no awareness, no dignity?" "I have awareness," Ellie screamed silently. "I have dignity. I'm still here. There's something else we need to discuss." William continued reluctantly. "The financial aspect. Dad's insurance only covers so much. Long-term care for someone in Mom's condition? It's expensive. Really expensive." Michael looked up sharply. "Are you saying we should let Mom die because it's too expensive to keep her alive?" "I'm saying we need to consider all the factors," William replied defensively. "What would Mom want us to do? Bankrupt the family keeping her body alive when there's no hope of recovery?" As her children debated her fate in terms of dollars and cents, Ellie felt a new kind of despair settling over her. She was beginning to understand that the family she'd devoted her life to, the people she'd sacrificed everything for, were capable of calculating her worth in ways she'd never imagined. Outside in the corridor, Richard and James were wrapping up their conversation. "Think about it, Richard," James was saying. "Ellie's gone. The woman you married, the life you built together. That's over. The question now is what kind of future you want to build for yourself." As the two men returned to the waiting room, Ellie lay in her hospital bed, fully conscious and utterly powerless, listening to the sound of her family planning her funeral while she was still alive to hear every word. The machines beside her bed continued their steady rhythm, marking time in a world where she existed but could not participate, and somewhere in the darkness of her trapped consciousness, Ellie began to understand that her real fight was just beginning. The whispered conversations about what happens next had grown louder by the end of the first week, and Ellie's heart, the only part of her that seemed to respond to emotion anymore, hammered against her ribs as she lay in the sterile darkness of her ICU room. The funeral home representative had left his business card with William that afternoon, and the casual way her eldest son had tucked it into his wallet made her want to scream. But it was the conversation she overheard between Richard and James Morrison during the evening visiting hours that shattered what remained of her illusions about the man she'd loved for 49 years. "I can't keep this up much longer. James." Richard's voice carried the weight of confession as he spoke in low tones near the window, thinking Ellie couldn't hear him over the steady beeping of the monitors. "The bills are piling up, and Grace has been asking questions about when I'm going to make a decision." Grace. The name hit Ellie like a physical blow. Grace Henderson, the widow from their church who'd been bringing Richard casseroles and sympathy since her husband died 2 years ago. The same Grace who'd been calling the house with increasing frequency, always with some excuse about church committee business. "How bad is it?" James's voice carried the careful neutrality of someone who already knew the answer. "Worse than I told you before. The poker games at Murphy's got out of hand last winter. I'm down $63,000, and that's not counting what I borrowed against the house." Richard's admission came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding it back for months. The insurance money would clear everything and give me a fresh start with Grace. Ellie felt something die inside her chest that had nothing to do with her medical condition. The gambling had been going on for months, years, and Richard was planning a future with another woman while she lay here fighting for her life. "Ellie never knew?" James asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. "Ellie never knew about a lot of things." Richard's voice carried a bitterness that made Ellie's trapped consciousness recoil. "She was always so busy being the perfect principal, the perfect mother, the perfect wife, always organizing everyone else's life, while I felt like I was disappearing in my own house." The casual cruelty of his words was worse than a physical slap. 49 years of marriage, and this was how he really felt about her, about their life together. "You sure about this Grace thing?" James's question carried the weight of an old friend's concern. "Moving that fast after." Grace understands me in ways Ellie never did. Richard's interruption was firm, decisive. She listens when I talk. She makes me feel like I matter. The conversation was interrupted by Marianne's arrival, her sensible shoes clicking against the hospital's polished floors with military precision. Richard and James shifted to discussing baseball scores, but the damage was done. Ellie lay there, absorbing the devastation of learning that her husband had been living a double life, planning her replacement, and counting on her death to solve his financial problems. But Marianne's presence brought its own revelations. After James left and Richard went to the cafeteria, Ellie's sister pulled up a chair close to the bed and began speaking in the frank, unfiltered way that had always been her trademark. You know, Ellie, I should probably feel guilty talking to you like this when you can't answer back. Marianne's voice carried decades of suppressed resentment. But maybe it's better this way. Maybe you'll finally hear some truths you've been avoiding your whole life. Ellie's consciousness focused intently on her sister's words, sensing that something significant was coming. I was in love with Richard first, before you ever met him at that college mixer. Marianne's confession hit like a thunderbolt. I saw him in the library 3 weeks before that party. We talked for hours about books and dreams and all the things we wanted from life. He asked me to coffee, and I thought, well, it doesn't matter what I thought. The revelation reframed decades of family history in Ellie's mind. Marianne's persistent single status, her sharp comments about Richard over the years, her complicated relationship with family gatherings. Then you walked into that mixer wearing that blue dress, and he forgot I existed, just like everyone always forgot I existed when you were around. Pretty Ellie with her easy smile and her natural way of making everyone feel special. Marianne's voice carried the accumulated pain of a lifetime of being second choice. I convinced myself I was better off alone, told myself I didn't need what you had. The machines beeped steadily around them as Marianne continued her confession to what she believed was an unconscious sister. But watching him these past few days, seeing how quickly he's planning your funeral, and thinking about that Henderson woman, maybe I should be grateful. Maybe you saved me from discovering what kind of man he really is. Marianne's laugh was bitter, decades of suppressed feelings finally finding voice. At least my loneliness was honest. The conversation was interrupted by William's return from his phone call in the hallway, but Ellie had heard enough to understand that her family was built on foundations far more fragile than she'd ever imagined. Her sister had harbored secret love and resentment for decades. Her husband was planning her replacement while counting insurance money, and the children she'd raised with such devotion were already discussing the division of her belongings as if she were already buried. As William settled into his chair and began reading work emails on his phone, Ellie caught fragments of his whispered conversation with someone his wife. She realized about mortgage payments and job security. Even her responsible eldest son was viewing her condition through the lens of financial necessity. The evening shift brought new nurses and the familiar ritual of family members taking turns at her bedside. But now Ellie listened to every conversation with new awareness, hearing the undercurrents of self-interest beneath the expressions of grief. She was learning that the family she devoted her life to building was held together more by habit and obligation than by the genuine love she'd always assumed. Richard returned from the cafeteria with coffee and the casual announcement that he'd spoken with their pastor about funeral arrangements. Just preliminary discussions, he assured William and Jennifer, though his tone suggested nothing preliminary about it. Pastor Reynolds wants to know about music preferences and readings. As her family discussed the details of her death with increasing specificity, Ellie felt her consciousness retreating into a place of pure determination. She might be trapped in her own body, unable to communicate or move, but she was still alive, still fighting, and now she had something beyond survival to fight for. She needed to live long enough to see justice for the lies and betrayals that were being revealed in what everyone assumed were her final days. The monitors around her bed continued their steady rhythm, marking time in a life that everyone believed was ending, but Ellie's mind was more alert than it had been since her collapse, focused on the singular goal of finding a way to signal her consciousness before her family buried her under the weight of their own guilty secrets. The funeral arrangements were now in full swing, and Ellie's children had fallen into their familiar roles with devastating efficiency. From her prison of paralyzed flesh, she watched William assume command of the logistics, while Jennifer managed the emotional needs of extended family, and Michael retreated into guilty silence. But it was their private conversations, the ones they thought she couldn't hear, that revealed the true cost of her lifetime devotion to holding their family together. The breaking point came during William's phone call with his wife on Tuesday evening. He'd stepped into the hallway, thinking the closed door would muffle his voice, but hospital walls were thin, and Ellie's hearing had become preternaturally sharp. Sarah, I can't keep pretending everything's fine. William's voice cracked with the strain of maintaining his composed facade. I got the final notice from the bank today. If I don't make the payment by Friday, we lose the house. Ellie's heart would have stopped if it weren't already struggling. Her responsible, successful eldest son was facing bankruptcy. The severance package barely lasted 3 months, and the unemployment isn't covering the mortgage. I've been drinking again. Sarah, not just wine with dinner, the real stuff. The stuff that makes me forget that I'm 47 years old and can't provide for my own family. William's confession poured out in a torrent of suppressed shame. Mom's life insurance policy is our only way out. $250,000 would clear the mortgage and give us breathing room until I find something. The casual way he discussed her death as financial salvation made Ellie's consciousness recoil in horror. This was the son who'd called her every Sunday for 20 years, who'd never missed a birthday or anniversary, who'd built his entire identity around being the family's rock of stability. I know how it sounds, William continued, his voice thick with self-loathing. I know I'm basically praying for my mother to die so I can pay my bills. But what choice do I have? Michael's never contributed anything to this family. And Jennifer gave up any claim to responsibility when she decided to be a stay-at-home mom. It's always been up to me to fix everything. The bitterness in his voice revealed decades of resentment that Ellie had never suspected. Her golden child, the one she'd been so proud of, felt trapped by the very expectations she'd helped create. When William returned to the room, it was Jennifer's turn to reveal her hidden self. She'd been coordinating with the florist about arrangements when her daughter called, and the conversation took a direction that shattered another of Ellie's fundamental assumptions about her family. Emma, I need to tell you something. Jennifer's voice carried a lightness that seemed inappropriate for someone planning her mother's funeral. This might sound terrible, but I've been thinking about going back to school, to medical school. Ellie listened as her daughter, the one who'd always been content with domestic life, revealed dreams that had been buried for 20 years. I know the timing is awful, but maybe this is a sign. Maybe this is my chance to finally do something for myself. Jennifer's voice grew stronger, more confident. I've spent 24 years being what everyone needed me to be, the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect mother. But I was supposed to be a doctor. Remember, before I met David, before I got pregnant with Emma. The conversation revealed a lifetime of suppressed ambition that Ellie had never recognized. She'd always praised Jennifer for her selfless devotion to family, never realizing it came at the cost of her daughter's own dreams. The life insurance money could pay for school. I could finally finish what I started. I could become someone other than just Emma's mom, or David's wife, or Ellie Richards' daughter. Jennifer's voice carried a freedom that sounded almost giddy. Is that horrible that I'm excited about finally living my own life? Even Michael, whom Ellie had expected to be genuinely grieving, revealed his own complicated relationship with her condition during his conversation with his girlfriend later that evening. She learned that even her most authentic child harbored resentments she'd never suspected. The worst part is how they're all looking at me. Michael's voice carried familiar frustration. Like I'm going to mess up the funeral arrangements or say something inappropriate. Even when Mom's dying, I'm still the family screw-up. His girlfriend's murmured response was too quiet to hear, but Michael's reply cut deep. You want to know the truth, part of me is relieved. Mom spent so much energy trying to fix me, trying to make me into something I wasn't. Maybe now I can just be myself without disappointing her every time I breathe wrong. The devastating honesty of her children's confessions left Ellie reeling. The family she devoted her life to building, the relationships she'd carefully nurtured and protected, were revealed as constructions built on obligation and resentment rather than genuine love. But it was Richard's elderly mother, Evelyn, who delivered the most brutal assessment when she arrived that evening from the nursing home. The 94-year-old woman had lost most of her social filters, and her observations carried the sharp clarity of someone who no longer bothered with polite lies. Well, Evelyn announced to the assembled family as she settled into the visitor's chair, I suppose you're all relieved to finally get this over with. Ellie's been holding this family together with spit and determination for decades now. You can all stop pretending to be better than you are. The uncomfortable silence that followed her pronouncement confirmed what Ellie had begun to suspect, that her life's work of creating family harmony had been built on a foundation of lies, suppressed resentments, and financial dependencies that masqueraded as love. As the evening wore on and her family continued their discussions about flower arrangements and burial plots, Ellie felt her consciousness shifting from grief to something harder and more determined. They thought she was unconscious, safely dead to their revelations, but she was learning truths that would reshape everything if she could find a way to signal that she was still alive to witness their betrayals. The monitors continued their steady rhythm, marking time in what everyone believed were her final days. But Ellie's mind was crystallizing around a single burning purpose: survival, long enough to hold them all accountable for the lies they were telling themselves about love, family, and what really mattered when they thought no one was watching. The funeral home brochures lay spread across the ICU waiting room table like a macabre buffet of final choices. Ellie could hear the rustling of glossy pages through her partially open door as her family debated casket styles and flower arrangements with the casual efficiency of people planning a dinner party. The mahogany is beautiful, but honestly, the oak is more practical. Jennifer's voice carried that same tone she'd used when helping her teenage daughter shop for prom dresses. Mom always preferred understated elegance anyway. 2 weeks had passed since her collapse, and the pretense of hope had evaporated like morning dew. No one spoke of recovery anymore. Even Michael had stopped reading to her from his favorite books, though he still visited daily, sitting silently by her bedside with the weight of premature grief aging his young face. "I think she'd want the service at First Presbyterian," William said, his voice taking on the authoritative cadence he used at board meetings. She taught Sunday school there for 15 years. Pastor Reynolds already said he'd be honored to officiate. Ellie felt a surge of bitter irony. They were planning her funeral with more attention to detail than they'd shown her actual life in years. When was the last time any of them had asked what she wanted while she could still answer, "What about the music?" Marianne's voice held an unusual tremor. She always loved Amazing Grace, but that seemed so final. "Because it is final, Marianne," Richard said quietly. "She's gone. The doctors have made that clear." Gone. The word echoed in Ellie's trapped consciousness like a death knell. She wanted to scream, to shatter every piece of medical equipment in the room, to somehow prove that she was still present, still fighting, still desperately alive behind the mask of her unresponsive body. "I've been thinking about the house," Richard continued, and something in his tone made Ellie's internal alarm sound. "It's too big for just me, and with the property taxes going up. Dad, you don't need to make any big decisions right now," Jennifer interrupted gently, but Richard pressed on. "Grace thinks I should consider something smaller. Maybe one of those senior communities with activities," and he trailed off, perhaps realizing he'd revealed too much. Grace. The name hit Ellie like a physical blow. Grace Henderson from the church auxiliary, the widow who'd been bringing Richard casseroles and companionship since her husband died last spring. The woman who always seemed to find excuses to touch Richard's arm during coffee hour, whose laugh rang a little too loudly at his jokes. "Grace, thanks." Marianne's voice sharpened with the predatory instinct of someone who'd spent decades collecting family secrets. "Since when does Grace Henderson get a vote in family decisions?" The silence that followed was thick with implications. Ellie could practically hear Richard's internal scrambling, the desperate search for words that might undo his casual betrayal. "She's been helpful," he said finally, "during this difficult time. Just being a good friend." Friend. William's voice carried a cold skepticism that Ellie had never heard directed at his father. "Is that what we're calling it? That's enough," Richard snapped, but the damage was done. The cat was out of the bag, prowling through the family's forced civility with claws extended. Ellie's mind reeled. How long had this been going on? The late-night phone calls Richard claimed were from his fishing buddies, the Wednesday evening men's Bible study that never seemed to include any actual studying, the new cologne he'd started wearing to church. "We should probably discuss the will," William said, his voice carefully neutral in the way that meant he was furious but trying to maintain control. "Mom's attorney called yesterday about scheduling a reading." "Already?" Jennifer sounded shocked. "She's not even, shouldn't we wait until—" "Until what?" Marianne's bitter laugh cut through the air. "Until she miraculously wakes up. The doctors have been clear about that possibility." "Impossible," Ellie wanted to shout. "The possibility isn't impossible. I'm right here, listening to every cruel word you're saying about dividing up my life like pieces of pie. There's the life insurance to consider, too," Richard said quietly. $350,000, it'll help with expenses." The way he said it made Ellie's skin crawl. Help with expenses, or help with starting a new life with Grace Henderson in a convenient senior community where widower Richard could play the grieving husband while building something fresh with his helpful friend. "I've been thinking about Mom's jewelry," Jennifer said, and Ellie could hear her opening the small box they brought from home. "The pearl necklace should probably go to Emma, but the diamond earrings Dad gave her for their 30th anniversary, those were expensive." William interjected. We should have them appraised. Appraised, as if her memories had a market value, as if the weight of 30 years of marriage could be measured in carats and cash. I'd like her recipe box, Jennifer continued, and maybe some of her books, the ones she was always rereading. The china set is valuable, Marianne added. Spode Italian, a complete service for 12. I helped her pick it out for her wedding. They were dissecting her life with surgical precision, each claiming pieces of her existence as if she were already buried. Ellie wanted to weep, but even tears were beyond her reach. What about the garden? Michael's voice, speaking for the first time, carried a broken quality that pierced through Ellie's rage. She spent so much time with her roses. They're going to die if nobody takes care of them. The simple observation, so much more meaningful than discussions of jewelry and china, nearly broke Ellie's heart. Michael understood what the others missed, that she was more than the sum of her possessions, more than an estate to be divided and distributed. We can hire someone, Richard said dismissively, or just let them go natural. They're only flowers. Only flowers. Only the hobby that had brought her joy for 30 years. Only the living beauty she'd nurtured through seasons of drought and storm. Only the one thing that had remained constant through all the changes and challenges of their marriage. Doctor, Morgan's voice in the hallway interrupted Ellie's spiral of betrayal and rage. She was speaking to another doctor, their conversation carrying clearly through the thin walls. The family is pushing for a timeline, she said quietly. They want to know about withdrawing life support. Legally, she's got a living will that specifies no extraordinary measures. Any sign of awareness? The other voice asked. None that I can document. Though there's something, call it intuition. But sometimes I feel like she's more present than the tests indicate. Her vitals sometimes spike during family conversations. Ellie tried to channel every ounce of her consciousness toward affecting those monitors, toward making the spikes more dramatic, more obvious, but her body remained stubbornly unresponsive to her desperate mental commands. Probably just autonomic responses, the other doctor said. The body can react even when the mind is gone. Gone. There was that word again, sealing her fate with clinical certainty. Back in the waiting room, the family had moved on to discussing funeral flowers and memorial donations. They spoke of her in past tense, sharing memories that felt more like eulogies than expressions of love. But beneath the surface planning, Ellie could hear the undercurrents of resentment and greed that her crisis had exposed. Richard's eagerness to move forward with grace, William's careful calculation of inheritance values, Jennifer's quiet inventory of meaningful possessions, Marianne's bitter satisfaction at finally having her say about family dynamics. Only Michael seemed genuinely broken by the loss of her, and even he was beginning to accept what everyone told him was inevitable. As night fell over the hospital, Ellie lay in her mechanical tomb, listening to the beeps and whirs that marked time in her suspended existence. Her family was already living in a world without her, making plans and decisions based on the assumption that Eleanor Richards had effectively died 2 weeks ago. But she hadn't died. She was trapped, furious, and increasingly desperate to find some way to signal her presence before they made the final decision to let her body follow where they believed her mind had already gone. The funeral planning continued in hushed tones beyond her door, while Ellie fought the most important battle of her life, the battle to prove she was still worth fighting for. The decision came on a Tuesday morning, delivered with the same clinical detachment doctor Morgan might use to discuss changing a medication dosage. Ellie heard Richard's voice through the thin wall, steady and resolute in a way that chilled her to the bone. We've talked it over as a family, he said. We think it's time to let her go. She wouldn't want to be kept alive like this. Wouldn't want as if her 49 years of marriage had somehow transmitted her deepest wishes about circumstances she'd never imagined. As if Richard's recent conversations with Grace Henderson had given him special insight into Ellie's soul. I understand, Doctor, Morgan replied softly. It's never an easy decision. We can schedule the withdrawal of life support for Thursday morning. That gives you time to notify other family members, make any final arrangements. Thursday, 2 days, 48 hours, to somehow break through the prison of her paralyzed body and prove that Eleanor Richards was still fighting for her life. Ellie focused every particle of her consciousness on her right hand, the same hand Richard had held in the ambulance when he'd begged her not to leave him. She concentrated until her mental strain felt physical, willing her fingers to twitch, to curl, to give any sign of the desperate awareness trapped within. Nothing. Her hand remained as motionless as carved marble, betraying no hint of the screaming consciousness within. From the hallway, she heard the soft squeak of rubber-soled shoes approaching. Nurse Patricia Chin had been assigned to Ellie's care rotation, and unlike the other staff who moved through their duties with professional efficiency, Patricia lingered. She spoke to Ellie during procedures, her voice carrying a warmth that suggested she still saw a person rather than just a collection of failing systems. "Good morning, Mrs. Richards," Patricia said as she entered the room. "I'm just going to check your vitals and make you a little more comfortable." The gentle touch of Patricia's hands as she adjusted Ellie's position sent waves of gratitude through her paralyzed form. Someone still treated her with dignity, still acknowledged her humanity, even when medical science declared her absent. "You know," Patricia continued conversationally as she recorded readings from the monitors, "I had a patient once who seemed just like you, completely unresponsive for weeks. Then one day," she blinked, "just once, but it was intentional. Turned out she'd been aware the whole time." Ellie's heart rate spiked. Could Patricia see the monitor readings? Did she notice the way Ellie's vital signs changed during certain conversations? "Your family has already made plans," Patricia went on, her voice dropping to a whisper, "just like hers had. But something told me to keep watching, keep trying." She paused in her work, and Ellie could sense her studying the monitors more carefully. "Mrs. Richards, I know this might sound crazy, but if you can hear me, if you're in there somewhere, I want you to try something for me." Ellie's entire being focused on Patricia's words like a drowning person grasping for a lifeline. "I'm going to ask you to think about something that makes you happy. Really concentrate on it. Sometimes strong emotions can affect heart rate, even in unconscious patients." "Happy." Ellie seized on the instruction, flooding her mind with memories of joy. Michael's first steps in her kitchen, his chubby hands reaching for her as he wobbled across the linoleum. The morning Richard brought her coffee in bed for her 60th birthday, his hair still rumpled from sleep. The satisfaction of watching her roses bloom each spring, their petals unfurling like nature's own miracle. The heart monitors beeping quickened slightly, just enough to make Patricia pause and study the display. "Interesting," she murmured. "Now think about something sad." The instruction was cruel in its simplicity. Ellie didn't have to search for sadness. It surrounded her like floodwater. Richard's plans to sell their home and move in with Grace, her children dividing her possessions like vultures, the funeral scheduled for Saturday, the flowers already ordered, the obituary probably already written. Her heart rate slowed, the beeps becoming more labored. Patricia was silent for a long moment, and Ellie could practically hear her processing what she'd observed. When she spoke again, her voice carried a tremor of excitement barely contained by professional restraint. "Mrs. Richards, I'm going to try something else. If you can hear me, if you understand what I'm saying, I want you to try to change your breathing. Not dramatically. Just try to make it a little faster or slower." Ellie had never paid conscious attention to her breathing before the paralysis, but now she focused on each automatic inhale and exhale with laser intensity. She imagined herself running, climbing stairs, anything that might naturally increase her respiratory rate. The ventilator continued its mechanical rhythm, but Patricia's trained eye caught something, a subtle change in the pattern, a slight variation in the depth of Ellie's breaths that shouldn't have been possible in a truly unconscious patient. "Oh my God," Patricia whispered, and Ellie could hear her moving quickly around the room, checking equipment, verifying readings. "Dr. Morgan needs to see this. She needs to see this right now." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. Patricia's voice carried urgently down the hallway as she summoned the doctor, her professional composure barely containing her excitement. Dr. Morgan arrived with the measured skepticism of someone who'd seen too many false hopes dashed by wishful thinking. But Patricia was insistent, methodical in her explanation of what she'd observed. The heart rate changes were too consistent to be coincidental, Patricia explained rapidly. And the breathing variations, they occurred exactly when I asked for them. Dr. Morgan, I think she might have locked in syndrome. Locked in syndrome. The words hit Ellie like a revelation. She'd heard the term before but never fully understood it. Conscious awareness trapped in a paralyzed body, a nightmare condition that could be easily mistaken for a persistent vegetative state. Dr. Morgan approached Ellie's bedside with renewed attention, her clinical manner softened by the possibility that she'd been wrong about her patient's condition. "Mrs. Richards," she said clearly, "I'm going to run some tests. If you can hear and understand me, I need you to work with me. Can you try to blink your eyes?" Ellie summoned every ounce of will, every fragment of determination she possessed, and focused it on her eyelids. The effort felt enormous, like trying to lift a mountain with her mind alone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, barely perceptible, but undeniable, her left eyelid fluttered. The sharp intake of breath from both women told Ellie they'd seen it. "Again, doctor," Morgan said urgently. "Try to blink again. This time, The movement was slightly more pronounced, a definite flutter that couldn't be dismissed as involuntary muscle spasm. Patricia, cancel that order for Thursday. Doctor, Morgan said, her voice tight with professional excitement and horror at what had almost happened. We need to run a complete neurological assessment immediately, and we need to contact the family. As footsteps hurried from the room, Ellie lay in her mechanical twilight, feeling something she hadn't experienced in 2 weeks, hope. Someone had seen her, acknowledged her presence, recognized that she was still fighting. But even as relief flooded through her consciousness, another emotion emerged, dread. Her family was about to learn that she'd been aware all along, that she'd heard every word about Richard's affair, every discussion of inheritance and funeral arrangements, every revelation of their true feelings about her death. They were about to discover that the woman they thought was gone had been listening to everything, processing their betrayals, understanding exactly how little her life had meant to them once they believed she couldn't observe their behavior. The reckoning was coming, and Ellie wasn't sure whether her breakthrough was a blessing or a curse. The fluorescent light seemed brighter as consciousness became communication. Patricia sat beside Ellie's bed in the pre-dawn quiet, her voice barely above a whisper as she worked through their improvised system. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no, Patricia explained patiently. Can you do that for me, Mrs. Richards? Ellie summoned her strength and managed a single deliberate flutter of her left eyelid. Good. Are you in pain? 2 blinks. No pain, just the endless frustration of being trapped in her own body. Have you been aware this whole time since the beginning? 1 blink? Yes. The weight of that single response seemed to settle over Patricia like a shroud. Oh, honey, Patricia breathed. I'm so sorry. We should have known. I should have pushed harder when I noticed the changes in your vitals. Ellie wished she could reassure this angel of a nurse that none of this was her fault. But their communication system didn't allow for such complexities. She could only lie there, grateful beyond measure that someone finally saw her. Dr. Morgan arrived as the sun painted the hospital windows pale gold. Her usually composed demeanor showed cracks of professional anxiety as she approached the bed. Mrs. Richards, I need to ask you some questions to assess your cognitive function, she said, her voice carefully controlled. Do you understand where you are? 1 blink. Do you remember collapsing at your grandson's graduation party? 1 blink, accompanied by the phantom weight of remembered apple pie balanced on her arms. Do you understand that you've been unconscious? That is, we believed you were unconscious for over 2 weeks. 1 blink, heavy with the accumulated weight of every overheard conversation, every painful revelation. Doctor, Morgan exchanged a meaningful look with Patricia. Mrs. Richards, this is important. Have you been able to hear conversations around you during this time? The pause stretched long enough that Ellie could hear the mechanical breathing of the ventilator, the distant murmur of morning shift change in the hallway. Finally, she blinked once. Dear God, Doctor, Morgan whispered. Patricia leaned forward. Doctor, we need to call the family. They were planning to withdraw support tomorrow. Today, actually, Doctor, Morgan corrected grimly. They moved it up. The funeral home needed more time for arrangements. She turned back to Ellie. Mrs. Richards, I'm going to contact your family immediately, but I need you to know what you have is called locked-in syndrome. Your mind is completely intact, but the stroke damaged the parts of your brain that control movement and speech. With time and therapy, some patients recover limited function. But, she didn't finish the sentence, but Ellie understood. This might be her reality forever. Consciousness without the ability to fully communicate. Awareness without agency. An hour later, she heard their voices in the hallway before they entered her room. Richard's tone carried a bewildered edge, while William's was sharp with something that might have been panic. What do you mean? She's been conscious, William demanded. The doctor said brain dead. You said there was no hope. Not brain dead, Dr. Morgan corrected as they filed into the room. We believed she was in a persistent vegetative state, but locked-in syndrome can present very similarly. The key difference is that Mrs. Richards has been aware of everything around her. Ellie watched their faces as the implications sank in. Richard went pale, his hand moving unconsciously to his collar, as if it had suddenly become too tight. Jennifer's face crumpled with what looked like genuine horror, while William's jaw worked silently as he processed what this meant for all the conversations they'd had in this very room. Marianne, characteristically, was the first to speak. Everything she heard, everything we said. It appears so, Dr. Morgan confirmed. The silence that followed was deafening. Ellie could practically see the mental calculations happening. Who had said what? Which secrets had been revealed? which true feelings had been exposed in the presence of someone they'd believed could never judge them for it. Michael pushed past his elders to reach her bedside, tears already streaming down his young face. Grandma, Grandma, can you hear me? One blink, and Michael's sob of relief filled the room. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry we gave up on you. I knew something was wrong. I felt like you were still there, but everyone said. Richard stepped forward, his movements uncertain. Ellie, we need to talk. There are things. Ellie looked directly at him and blinked twice. No, she had no desire to hear his explanations or justifications. Not yet, perhaps not ever. The rejection was clear enough that Richard stepped back as if she'd slapped him. Mrs. Richards, Doctor, Morgan intervened gently. Your family has been under tremendous stress. Perhaps we should focus on your recovery for now. There will be time for other conversations later. But Ellie knew there would be no easy path forward. The damage was done, the illusions shattered. She was alive, aware, and trapped not just in her paralyzed body, but in the wreckage of relationships built on assumptions that had proven devastatingly false. Her breakthrough had saved her life, but as she watched her family grapple with the consequences of their revealed truths, Ellie wondered if consciousness was truly the gift she'd fought so desperately to reclaim. The silence in the ICU waiting room stretched like a taut wire after Dr. Morgan's words settled into their collective consciousness. Ellie could hear every shallow breath, every nervous shuffle of feet, every creak of the plastic chairs as her family processed what they'd just been told. You're saying she's been awake this whole time. Richard's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. Through the thin walls, Ellie could picture his face, that particular shade of gray he turned when his blood pressure spiked. Locked-in syndrome means the patient is fully conscious and aware, Dr. Ray Morgan explained with careful patience. She can hear, understand, and process everything around her. The damage is specifically to the motor pathways that control movement and speech, but her cognitive function appears to be completely intact. William's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly. How long? How long has she been listening? From the beginning, most likely. These cases often present as comatose initially, because the signs of consciousness are so subtle. It's one of the most challenging diagnoses in neurology. Ellie heard Jennifer's sharp intake of breath, followed by what sounded like a stifled sob. Oh God, oh my God, what have we done? The weight of realization was settling over them like a heavy blanket. Every private conversation, every assumption about her condition, every plan they'd made thinking she couldn't hear all of it had been witnessed by the woman they thought was beyond reach. We need to see her, Michael said, his voice steadier than the others. We need to see her right now. Of course, Dr. Morgan replied, but I want you to understand that this is going to be overwhelming for everyone. Mrs. Richards has been trapped in her own body for weeks, unable to respond despite being fully aware. She's going to need time to process your reactions, just as you need time to process hers. Richard was the first to enter her room, his footsteps hesitant on the polished floor. Ellie felt his presence before she heard him pull the visitor's chair closer to her bed. Ellie, his voice cracked on her name. Honey, can you hear me? With tremendous effort. Ellie managed the tiniest flutter of her eyelids. It was barely perceptible, but Richard gasped as if she'd shouted, Jesus Christ, she did it. She moved her eyes. He was crying now, really crying. Ellie, I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. The others filed in behind him, William standing rigid near the foot of the bed, Jennifer covering her mouth with trembling hands, Michael positioning himself where Ellie could see him if she managed to open her eyes fully. Marianne hung back near the doorway, her face unreadable. Mom! William's voice was thick with shame. If you can hear me, if you really can hear me. He stopped, unable to finish. Ellie tried again, this time managing to partially open her left eye. The effort was exhausting, but she needed them to know she was there. She was here. She had heard everything. Jennifer burst into tears. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry about what I said, about wanting to be free, about the inheritance, about everything. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. But even as Jennifer apologized, Ellie could hear the defensive edge in her voice. She was sorry she'd been caught, sorry for the awkwardness of the situation, but not necessarily sorry for the feelings themselves. Michael moved closer to the bed. Mom, I need you to know something. I never stopped believing you'd come back, even when everyone else. He glanced meaningfully at his siblings. I never gave up on you. Ellie's heart monitor showed a slight acceleration, her only way of responding to his words. Dr. Morgan, who had remained in the room, noticed immediately. Her heart rate increased when you spoke. That's a very good sign. It suggests she's not only hearing, but emotionally processing what you're saying. Richard wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Ellie, about Grace, about what you heard Frank and me talking about. He struggled for words. I never meant for any of this to happen. I felt so alone, and you were always so busy with everyone else's problems. The heart monitor's beeping increased noticeably, even trapped in her body. Ellie's anger was palpable. William stepped forward, his corporate training taking over. We need to talk about what happens now. The funeral arrangements are canceled, obviously. We need to call the funeral home, return the deposits. Jesus, William, Michael snapped. She's been conscious for 5 minutes, and you're already talking logistics. Someone has to think practically about this situation. This isn't a situation, Jennifer said, finding her voice. This is our mother. Marianne finally spoke from the doorway, her tone characteristically blunt. Well, this is awkward as hell. Isn't it all those family secrets aired out for nothing? The room fell silent again. Marianne's refusal to show remorse or vulnerability hung in the air like smoke. Doctor. Morgan stepped forward. I think that's enough for today. Mrs. Richards needs time to rest. And frankly, so do all of you. This is a lot to process. As the family reluctantly filed out, Ellie could hear their whispered conversations in the hallway. Richard was already making excuses. William was calling his wife to update her. Jennifer was crying quietly to Michael about how awful she felt. But Ellie noticed something else. The conversations had changed. Where once they'd spoken freely, assuming she couldn't hear, now their voices carried the careful weight of people who knew they were being observed. The easy intimacy of their earlier betrayals was gone, replaced by the awkward formality of people caught in the act. Nurse Patricia entered after the family left, her presence immediately calming. That must have been incredibly difficult, she said softly, checking Ellie's monitors. But you did it. You showed them you're here. Ellie managed another small eye movement, her way of saying thank you to the woman who had saved her life by refusing to give up. The hard part starts now, Patricia continued, adjusting Ellie's pillows. They know you heard everything. Now you all have to figure out what to do with that knowledge. As Patricia's gentle ministrations continued, Ellie reflected on what had just occurred. The masks were off now. There would be no more pretending, no more assumptions about her condition. But she also understood that knowing the truth and dealing with it were very different things. Her family would try to make amends, but could she forgive what couldn't be unsaid? Could relationships built on decades of hidden resentments and false pretenses be rebuilt on honesty? And perhaps most importantly, did she want them to be? The heart monitor continued its steady rhythm as Ellie contemplated her new reality fully conscious, increasingly able to communicate, and burdened with the knowledge of who her family really was when they thought no one was watching. The morning after the revelation brought an awkward parade of visitors, each family member approaching Ellie's bedside with the careful uncertainty of people navigating a minefield. The easy familiarity of their previous visits had been replaced by something more complex, part guilt, part hope, and part fear of what she might communicate back to them. Richard arrived first, carrying a bouquet of yellow roses that he sat on her bedside table with trembling hands. His face had aged years in the past 24 hours, deep lines etched around his eyes that hadn't been there before. I've been up all night thinking about what to say to you, he began, settling into the visitor's chair. 49 years of marriage, and I don't know how to talk to my own wife. Ellie managed to open her eyes partially, focusing on his face. The man she'd married looked exhausted, defeated in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. Grace means nothing to me. You have to understand that. She was someone who listened when I felt invisible in my own home. His voice carried a defensive edge that immediately put Ellie on guard. You were always so busy taking care of everyone else. The kids, the grandkids, your sister, the church ladies. When did you ever just sit and ask how I was doing? The heart monitor's beeping increased, and Richard noticed immediately. He was trying to make his affair her fault, and even trapped in her body, Ellie's anger was unmistakable. I know how that sounds, he said quickly. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying, hell, I don't know what I'm saying. I messed up. Ellie, I messed up bad, and I don't know how to fix it. He reached for her hand, then stopped himself. The gambling started small, just a few bucks on the horses with James. Then it was poker games, then the casino trips. I kept thinking I'd win it back, make it right before you found out. The insurance money. He swallowed hard. I needed it to cover what I owe. What we owe? Ellie tried to process this new information. The debt was apparently significant enough to threaten their home, their savings, everything they built together, and Richard had been willing to let her die to solve his problem. I've moved out, he continued. I'm staying at James's for now. Helen, that's over. It was over the minute I realized you could hear everything. But the gambling, the debt, I need help with that. Real help. When he left, William appeared in the doorway, hesitant and formal. He'd always been the most emotionally guarded of her children, but now his usual composure was cracked, like poorly maintained concrete. Mom, I need you to know that I've checked myself into a treatment program. Outpatient. But it's a start. He stood at the foot of her bed, maintaining distance as if proximity might make his confession more shameful. I've been drinking more than I should for longer than I want to admit. Ellie had suspected but had never confronted him directly. William had always been so controlled, so successful, that she'd convinced herself his evening cocktails were just executive stress relief. I lost my job 3 months ago. Corporate restructuring, they called it. But the truth is, I wasn't performing, couldn't concentrate, missed meetings because I was hungover. His voice grew quieter. I've been living on severance and unemployment, but that runs out next month. He finally met her eyes, or tried to, given her limited ability to focus. When I heard about your condition, all I could think about was how the inheritance would solve everything. How terrible is that my mother is dying, and I'm calculating property values and life insurance payouts. A tear rolled down his cheek, the first time Ellie had seen William cry since he was a small boy. I'm going to get sober, Mom, really sober, not just cutting back or making promises I can't keep. And I'm going to find another job, even if it means starting over at the bottom. I can't be the man who wished his mother would die to pay his bills. Jennifer's visit later that afternoon was more complicated. She entered with the cautious energy of someone who'd spent the night crafting the perfect apology, only to find that words felt inadequate in the face of what she revealed. I enrolled in a medical program, she announced without preamble. Start this fall at the community college. Pre-nursing first, then the full program if I can handle the science courses. She pulled the chair closer to Ellie's bed. I know what I said about being free, about finally being able to pursue my dreams, and the awful truth is, part of me still feels that way. I'm 45 years old, mom, my kids are grown, my husband travels constantly for work, and I've spent 20 years being everyone's emotional support system. Jennifer's honesty was more painful than William's guilt or Richard's excuses because it was so raw, so unfiltered. I love you. I love this family. But I also resent what I gave up. And I resent that no one ever asked if I minded giving it up. Everyone just assumed Jennifer would be fine. Jennifer would handle it. Jennifer would put everyone else first because that's what good daughters and mothers do. Ellie felt a complex mix of emotions, hurt at Jennifer's resentment, but also a strange pride in her daughter finally speaking her truth. The inheritance thing, that was ugly. I'm ashamed I said it, but I'm not ashamed of wanting more from my life. I'm going to pursue nursing whether I inherit anything or not. Dave thinks I'm crazy to go back to school at my age, but I'm doing it anyway. Michael's arrival that evening was different from the others. He didn't apologize or confess hidden sins. Instead, he simply pulled up the chair and started talking to her the way he always had, directly, without filters or careful diplomacy. The family's pretty messed up, isn't it? He said conversationally. I mean, we always knew it on some level, but hearing everyone's real thoughts laid out like that, it's like finding out your favorite restaurant has been serving expired food for years. Ellie managed a slight eye movement that might have been amusement. Here's what I think happened, Michael continued. Everyone got so used to you being the family fixer that they forgot you were actually a person with your own needs and feelings. You became this function, the person who smoothed over problems and made everyone feel better about their choices. He leaned forward slightly. I'm probably the only one who's going to say this, but you enabled a lot of this dysfunction. Mom, Bob's drinking, Jennifer's martyrdom, Dad's gambling. You made it easier for everyone to avoid dealing with their problems by always being there to clean up the mess. It was a harsh assessment, but Ellie recognized the truth in it. She had been the family's emotional janitor, and in doing so, she perhaps prevented them from learning to clean up their own messes. But you know what? None of that excuses what they said, what they planned, and it sure as hell doesn't excuse Dad's affair or his eagerness to cash in your life insurance. Michael was quiet for a moment, then reached out and gently touched her hand. I'm going to take care of you, Mom. Whatever this recovery looks like, however long it takes, I'm going to be here. Not because I feel guilty or because I need inheritance money, but because I love you and because you deserve better than what this family has given you. Marianne's appearance later that evening was briefer and characteristically unrepentant. She entered with her usual no-nonsense stride, surveying the flowers and get-well cards that had accumulated throughout the day. "Well, this is a fine mess, isn't it?" she said without preamble. "Everyone's running around apologizing and making promises, like that changes what they really think." She looked directly at Ellie, her expression unreadable. "I'm not going to apologize for speaking the truth about Richard. You deserve to know what kind of man you married, even if it took 49 years. And I'm not sorry about telling everyone how I felt about you getting the perfect life while I got to be the spinster aunt who babysat everyone else's problems." Marianne's brutal honesty was oddly refreshing after the other's careful contrition. "But I am sorry you had to find out this way. Nobody deserves to be trapped in their own body listening to their family plan their funeral." She adjusted her purse strap and prepared to leave. "For what it's worth, I think Michael's the only one who came out of this looking decent. The rest of us, well, we're exactly who we always were. The only difference is now you know it too." As the day ended and visiting hours concluded, Ellie lay in the dim light of her room, processing the parade of confessions and justifications she'd heard. Each family member had revealed something true about themselves, but she wasn't certain that truth would lead to genuine change. Some people, when exposed, chose growth. Others simply became more careful about hiding their true selves. Time would tell which category her family fell into, and whether the relationships that survived this revelation would be worth rebuilding. 6 months later, Eleanor Richards sat in her wheelchair on the sun-drenched porch of the small house Michael had found for them. Watching autumn leaves drift across the yard, she was slowly learning to navigate. Her recovery had been remarkable by medical standards. She could speak in short sentences now, move her left hand with purpose, and operate the joystick on her electric wheelchair with increasing precision. More importantly, she could choose who deserved her limited energy and who didn't. The house was smaller than the family home she'd shared with Richard for 4 decades, but it felt more honest somehow. Michael had converted the garage into his art studio, and on quiet afternoons, she could hear him working the scrape of brushes against canvas, the soft jazz he played while he painted. It was a peaceful sound, unlike the careful tiptoeing she'd grown accustomed to when family members thought she was too fragile for normal life. "Morning, Mom," Michael called from the kitchen, emerging with 2 cups of coffee. His had become a ritual she treasured. No false cheer, no walking on eggshells, just the easy companionship of two people who'd learned to value honesty over harmony. "Good morning, honey." Her speech was still slow, deliberate, but clear enough that strangers no longer assumed she was mentally impaired. "Jennifer's coming today, around 2, Michael confirmed, settling into the porch chair beside her. "She wants to show you her first semester grades." Jennifer's transformation had been the most surprising. True to her word, she'd enrolled in the nursing program and was excelling in ways that seemed to astonish her own family. Her marriage to Dave had ended 6 months ago, an amicable divorce that freed them both to pursue the lives they'd been afraid to want. She visited every Sunday now, bringing textbooks and study guides, asking Ellie's advice about patient care scenarios. Their relationship had become more authentic than it had ever been when Jennifer felt obligated to be the perfect daughter. "She's happy," Ellie said, and meant it. Watching her daughter discover her own competence and passion had been worth the pain of learning how much Jennifer had resented her sacrificed dreams. "She is," and William called yesterday, 3 months sober as of Tuesday. William's recovery had been harder to witness than Jennifer's renaissance. The confident executive facade had crumbled completely, revealing a frightened man who'd been medicating anxiety and depression for years. He was working as an assistant manager at a sporting goods store, now a job that paid a fraction of his former salary, but allowed him to sleep at night without wondering if he'd remember what happened the day before. He visited monthly, their conversation stilted but gradually becoming more real. "He's trying," Ellie said, which was the most generous assessment she could manage. William was doing the work, following his program, but their relationship might never fully recover from the knowledge that he'd calculated her death in terms of financial relief. "Richard's moving to Florida with James next month," Michael mentioned casually, though Ellie detected the careful note in his voice that meant he was gauging her reaction. "I know. He told me." The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Richard had kept his promise to end things with grace, but the gambling debts had nearly cost them the house anyway. Ellie had chosen to buy out his half rather than sell their family home to strangers, though she'd sold it anyway once Michael found this smaller place that better suited her physical limitations. Richard's visits had dwindled to brief, awkward encounters where he asked about her health and she asked about his recovery program. Gamblers Anonymous was helping him, he claimed, though Ellie suspected James's continued presence in his life wasn't conducive to lasting change. You don't miss him, Michael observed. It wasn't a question. I miss who I thought he was, but that person? I'm not sure he ever really existed. It had taken months of physical therapy and counseling to reach that conclusion. I spent 49 years married to the idea of Richard rather than Richard himself. Marianne's relationship with the family had remained predictably unchanged. She'd moved to a retirement community in Arizona and sent Christmas cards with brief, impersonal updates. Her brutal honesty during Ellie's crisis had been painful but clarifying. Some people were incapable of the emotional growth that trauma sometimes inspired in others. Dr. Morgan's car pulled into the driveway, arriving for Ellie's monthly checkup. These visits had evolved beyond medical necessity into something more like friendship. Elizabeth Morgan had become fascinated by Ellie's case, not just medically, but personally, often staying after the examination to discuss the complex dynamics of family relationships and the psychology of locked-in syndrome. How are we doing today? Ellie, doctor, Morgan asked, settling her medical bag on the porch table. Better, stronger. And she was. The physical improvements continued slowly but steadily. More importantly, the emotional strength that had carried her through those terrible weeks of helpless observation had crystallized into something more valuable, the ability to distinguish between relationships worth investing in and those that drained her energy without offering genuine connection in return. Any new memories surfacing, Doctor? Morgan asked as she checked Ellie's reflexes. The trauma of locked-in syndrome sometimes affected memory formation. But Ellie remembered everything from those weeks with crystalline clarity. Nothing I want to forget, Ellie replied. Even the painful parts. They taught me things I needed to know. After Doctoress Morgan left, Ellie and Michael sat in comfortable silence, watching the autumn afternoon fade toward evening. Nurse Patricia would arrive soon for her weekly visit, no longer a professional obligation, but a friendship that had grown from their shared experience of fighting for Ellie's recognition and recovery. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd never been able to communicate? Michael asked eventually. If you'd stayed locked in forever? Ellie considered the question. I think I would have found a way to let go eventually, but I'm glad I didn't have to. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Going through that experience, hearing everyone's real thoughts, it was devastating, but it was also liberating. How so? I spent my whole life trying to hold this family together, trying to make everyone happy, trying to smooth over every conflict. I thought that was love. She moved her left hand to touch Michael's arm. But love isn't preventing people from facing consequences. It isn't enabling dysfunction to keep peace. Real love sometimes means letting people struggle with their own choices. Michael nodded thoughtfully. You think they're better off now? The family. I mean, Jennifer is. You always were. William. Maybe. He's doing the work, which is more than he was doing before. Richard? She shrugged as much as her limited mobility allowed. Richard is who he's always been. I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. As Patricia's car appeared at the end of the street, Ellie reflected on the strange gifts that had emerged from her nightmare. The family she'd worked so hard to preserve had essentially dissolved. But what remained was more honest, more genuine. The people who visited her now chose to be there rather than feeling obligated. The conversations were real rather than performative. I learned something important, she told Michael as Patricia approached the porch with her familiar warm smile. Being the family peacekeeper isn't the same as being loved, and being needed isn't the same as being valued. Patricia settled into the third porch chair, accepting the cup of coffee Michael brought her. Good day, she asked, noting the contentment in Ellie's expression. Most of them are now, Ellie replied, and it was true. The days were quieter, smaller, but infinitely more peaceful. She was no longer responsible for managing everyone else's emotions or solving everyone else's problems. The family that had gathered around her hospital bed 6 months ago, planning her funeral while she listened in helpless horror, had been replaced by a smaller circle of people who chose to love her without conditions or expectations. Sometimes losing everything false was necessary to discover what was genuinely true and valuable. Ellie had learned that lesson the hard way, trapped in her own body while her family revealed their real selves. But sitting on her porch now, surrounded by the people who had proven themselves worthy of her trust, she found herself grateful for the harsh education. The heart monitor that had once been her only voice was gone now, replaced by actual words, actual choices, actual relationships based on mutual respect rather than assumed obligation. Eleanor Richards had died in that hospital room in many ways. The woman who sacrificed herself to maintain family harmony was gone forever. But the woman who remained was stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free.